1001. Arrival, Hayata Island. Seeing that Shilu still cares about this matter, what should I say? Gongyi suddenly felt that Shilu seemed to care too much about what he had done. Everyone has a last resort. Don't you change your mind in the end. Don't think too much. There are not so many right and wrong in everything, as long as you don't go against your heart. Gongyi smiled and stood up as well, comforting Shiryu, and then rubbing Shiryu's head to show his friendliness again. Shilu listened to Gongyi's words in her heart, chuckled softly. Gongyi, she is really gentle. At this moment, Shilu always felt an inexplicable throbbing in her heart. It felt strange and warm, but she doesn't hate. Before Shilu could figure out what it felt like, Gongyi looked at her and smiled again. The smile this time made Shilu full of shyness, and Yuhi's face became a big one. Besides, I like a girl as gentle as Shiryu. Gongyi looked at Shilu, smiled and comforted. But after Gongyi finished speaking, Shilu was stunned, and there were only two words in his head, like. Could it be, is this a confession? But, I haven't thought about getting married yet. Xiaojuju in Shilu's heart almost exploded, and all kinds of thoughts emerged one by one. Even the picture of Gongyi proposing to himself had already appeared in his mind. Seeing Shilu's shy face, Gongyi was dumbfounded. Did he say something he shouldn't have said? Mayer looked at the two of them and was speechless. A neurotic idiot, an idiot in love, couldn't help holding his forehead, and it seemed that this standing guard couldn't be stopped. I said, you too. Said helplessly, but before he could finish speaking, Shiryu stopped him. I saw, Shiryu said excitedly. That, we can see my brother. Seeing this, Gongyi was a little stunned, then nodded. This girl's brain circuit is absolutely abnormal, her thinking is too ruthless. And Mayer, who couldn't get in the word, just watched silently. Not only that Shilu was abnormal, and Gongyi was not normal. Go. After an hour passed, a few people didn't communicate much, quietly guarding the night, observing the distance, for fear of missing something, but in the next second, Gongyi's eyes lit up and then stood up. Mayer, Shiryu, look, there's an island in front of you. Gongyi patted Mayer, who was sitting silently, and Shiryu, who was beside him with a peach blossom face, and said. Gongyi's words were undoubtedly successful in pulling one's mind, and the two returned to normal in an instant, looking at the front. Afterwards, everyone smiled in surprise. Yes, it was an island. After confirming that it was an island, Gongyi took out the life card, and sure enough, the life card was pointing at the island. Seems that you and Zai must be on this island, so next, it's time to land. Go call Aluma and Lan Ying, and I'll go and prepare to stop the boat. Mayer got up, moved his body, said to Gongyi, and then walked towards the rudder. Gongyi nodded, then went off the deck. Aluma, Lan Ying, get up, we've arrived at the place. Gongyi walked to the deck, looked at Aluma and Lan Ying who were sleeping, and said. Aruma, who was called up, didn't care. She yawned and asked, is it coming so soon? But Lan Ying was different. She was obviously very upset when she was woken up. She was so angry that she almost didn't punch Gongyi. Miss, here we are. Gongyi was speechless and said with a black line all over his head. 4. Lan Ying's wake-up spirit. Gongyi admires the tried-and-true attitude. Why so fast? Lan Ying yawned, sat up reluctantly, and said with a dissatisfied face. It seemed to them that they hadn't slept for 2 hours. It is indeed here, not sure if it is Hayata, but you is definitely up there. Gongyi spread his hands helplessly and said. Aruma nodded, and then several people went out of the cabin together and went to the deck. By the time they got to the deck, Mayer had already docked the boat on the shore, and the island was full of surprises at first sight. Although it is night now, this city has no meaning of being deserted at all. This city is reminiscent of a modern city. This road, this style, is not exactly the same as the modern one. At this moment, in the bottom of Gongyi's heart, there is a bold idea. If this is really Hayata Island, Marshal Tucci, is really here, and is the owner of this place. Then, in this city, there must be someone who is the same traveler as him. But whether this traveler is Marshal Tucci, that is something no one knows. Whether it's Marshal Tucci or not, the news of a transmigrator is already very surprising. That he is not the only one who is wandering in this pirate world. Please download Philu's novel. Read the latest chapter. Baidu search 99 Playmate, find 99 Novel Network and LT, otherwise. Chapter 1002, Kojima. But all this is just the beginning. Gong Yi naturally understands what kind of thing this is, but if there is really such a person, I still hope to meet earlier. After some people got off the boat, they found that the surrounding place was the same as the world Gong Yi was in at the beginning, the kind revealed here. The sense of familiarity can be almost instantly, which made Gong Yiyuhi's eyes widen. He didn't expect that there are such geniuses under the hood. Although they heard some introductions about Marshal Tucci, Gong Yi was still very curious about this person. At least judging from the fearful reactions of Shiliu and his brother, he should not be considered a good person. I really didn't expect that the decoration on this island seems to be completely different from the one before us. After hearing this, the corners of Gong Yi's mouth couldn't help but rise. How could the real urban civilization be similar to such an underdeveloped place? But after hearing you say this, Gong Yi's heart is actually quite happy. After all, this is one of his honors. But at this moment, Gong Yi found that the wanted photo of himself was posted on the door of the factory. He didn't expect his worth to rise to 600 million. Boss, don't you think this is you? Why isn't there a real person in the photo? You suddenly said something. Gong Yi glanced at him, and felt that he was sloppy. At this time, Aruma got off the boat. He didn't think that everything around him and what he thought were completely two directions. I originally thought that Hayata Island should be a very complicated existence. But now it seems that it is not as bad as I thought. At least this prosperous city still makes me feel very good, but when I think that its owner is Marshal Tucci, that good feeling is almost gone. Too clean. Let's go inside and take a look first. Shuru, just follow me. Shilu, who was on the side, heard this and quickly followed Gong Yi's footsteps. No one expected what would happen next. But at least Shiliu has another task, which is to save himself from that place. But at the same time Aruma looked at the direction where the two were leaving, and the gods couldn't help but think a few more times. Gong Yi naturally he didn't notice everything behind him. But then Aruma raised her eyes, holding Bobo as she walked towards the center of the city. Anyway, all the people's faces were very surprised, as if they had never seen this place before. Especially Mayor. He felt that although he had stayed on various oceans and small islands, he looked like a person who had never seen the world, and Aruma and Bobo quickly opened a certain distance from him. Is no need for two people to do such a thing that destroys the image. However, after seeing this scene, Lanying on the side smiled and walked to the side. No one thought that they would meet on this road next. Marshal Tucci's Claw Kiba. That person is naturally very familiar to Shiliu. You can recognize him just by looking at him, that is. The person who blocked the door of the house, looking for himself and his brother, but at this time Gong Yi didn't say anything. After noticing that his body was shaking, he quickly grabbed his hand and dragged it behind him, regardless of any responsibility. It's just that he was the one who lived in this bed and paid a certain price, so he would help him fulfill his wish, but at the same time, Aruma also realized that the situation on Gong Yi's side was not right. The few people were only a few blocks away, but just after Aruma and Bobo recovered, they wanted to take a step forward, but found that Gong Yi had disappeared from their sight at this time. Welcome to Hayata Island. Mr. Chichi would like to invite you to sit in the castle. After hearing this, Shilu's eyes quickly flashed a dangerous light, not to mention what he meant, but at least by looking at the look on his face, he could know that the patient was not thinking of a good idea, otherwise how could he use it? Looking at these two people with such eyes, she didn't know that she hadn't recognized herself yet, but she had already discovered who he really was from the first glance at him. At the beginning, I would settle the account with him. After all, it was a big blow to me. My brother has not been able to find it since that time. It seems that I also need to teach them a lesson this time. That's not necessary, we're just here to sit on this small island for a while. It's just, we'll leave after the ship's supplies have been moved. If you have anything to do with Mr. Kuki, you can come to us. The hotel came to look for us, anyway. This is his territory, there is nothing to be afraid of. After hearing this, the man smiled and went back to his life. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend, and share. Read the latest chapter. Baidu search 99 Playmate find 99 Novel Network. Chapter 103. One after another. At this time, Shilu, who was standing on the side, suddenly felt relieved, and his whole body was paralyzed on Gong Yi's body. Gong Yi didn't expect it, but at least in the situation in front of him, the man must have recognized it. Shiliu, otherwise, how could he show that last meaningful smile? But it's time to meet them, but at this time, they dragged themselves too far away, and all of a sudden, Gong Yi couldn't find a place to go back. But with the help of the life card, he found the trace of Aruma, and when he took a step forward, he found that Aruma was quarreling with someone. This made both Gong Yi and Shilu a little surprised. They looked at each other in the future and walked away. I can't say that I have never seen Aruma quarrel with anyone. He seems to be a very good-natured elder. Like his brother, he didn't show any anger at all. So everyone will be very close to him, but this is the first time Gong Yi has seen him quarreling with others, and the opposite is a man with a dream. He looks like a bad guy, but this time Gong Yi grabbed Shilu, and I still have to take a look at the side. If something changes, wouldn't it be better to take another shot at that time? Otherwise, if the other party knows that Aruma has backup, he will definitely leave immediately, but at this time he still doesn't know what the two of them are arguing about. Yi found a problem. A shiny thing suddenly appeared in the hand of the man in black. If he guessed correctly, it should be a dagger. And the dagger kept flashing some inexplicable hues, sometimes blue, sometimes purple, and then the man in black quickly turned his gaze to Gong Yi's side. Gong Yi didn't even think about it. He faced and greeted him, but reached out and pulled Shiliu behind him. At this time, the man saw the girl behind Gong Yi, and couldn't help but dazed in his eyes. This picture of Gong Yi is not. He looked at her with sharp eyes. Did she think of the girl behind him again? But at this moment, the man quickly flashed in front of Gong Yi, and Gong Yi quickly raised his arm to stop him. Such a quick reaction is natural. At this time, Shuru looked at the man in front of him with a bit of disbelief. I can't believe how my brother fell into such a place. Brother, is it really you? Took off the hat Kabuto, and had a face that looked similar to Shuru. At this time, Gong Yi put his arm down, so the danger has been lifted. But Ruma directly from that day he ran over and looked at the man in front of him angrily. At this time, Shiliu's brother couldn't help but feel guilty and Aruma said an apology. He had never expected such a situation before, let alone other things, and it was indeed because of a trivial matter in the street just now. After all, Shiliu's older brother really put a lot of effort into the process of finding Shiliu, so it's been considered that things are not going well recently, and his mind is not very smooth. When Alma appeared in front of him, all of a sudden this emotional point exploded. Why did you not let you escape to a safe place in this place before? Now that you come back, you must be caught in the tiger's mouth again. After hearing this, Gong Yi couldn't help but feel a little curious. Are the two of them related to Marshal Tucci? But at this time, Shiryu's brother suddenly looked at him with an apologetic expression. Then he put away the dagger in his hand and led a few people into his house. This is Aruma remembering that Bobo, Lanying and Mayor were still waiting under the bed, so he said he took the initiative to apply to go back and bring people over, and Shiryu's brother left with him. I really didn't expect that it would take no time. I thought it would take a while to find your brother. After hearing this, Shilu's eyes lit up, and he didn't expect his brother to hide in such a place. Sure enough, the most dangerous place is the safest place. Marshal Tucci has never found him. It's a good thing. But at this time, Gong Yi and Shilu had completely different thoughts. He was thinking about who built this island. After all, it doesn't matter if those architectural designs include some, they are basically the same as the world he once lived in. Is there anyone, have you been sent to this world like yourself? But at the same time, it made Gong Yi's game unbelievable. I believe, once such people really exist, why hasn't this place caused any confusion? Please download the underlined version of the novel. Fei Lu's novel. Read the latest chapter. Baidu search 99 playmates to find 99 novel network and LT. Chapter 1004. Exploration. After thinking of such a thing, Gong Yi quickly walked towards the direction in front of him. No matter what the reason is, the most important thing is to detect the enemy's situation, but I don't know where they went and why it took so long. They didn't even come, and took Shiryu from under the bed to arrive. This location only took 10 minutes, and now it is almost half an hour, and there is no sign of Shiryu's brother and Aruma coming back. So in an instant, Gong Yi thought of a bad thing, so don't go out to look for it. Leaving Shiryu alone in this room, Gong Yi planted a few bombs around before leaving, no matter what. How can you never let them get close to this girl? If I guessed correctly, that is not Shilu's brother at all, but was sent by a disguised person. I really didn't expect them to have such an effect, so I should really consider tearing my face with them. After all, this time, Marshal Tucci should not have considered that he would act so radically after a simple exchange. Bo found that they were all kidnapped by the man. If you guessed correctly, the elder brother Shiryu should have used the disguise technique in exchange for it, but how could someone as smart as Aruma not see through it? At this time, Uncle suddenly came out with a letter in his mouth and came out from the corner. It turned out that the letter was left to him by Aruma and said that he had found Marshal Tucci's lair. They went to observe first. After reading this letter, Gong Yi didn't feel any relaxation at all. After all, this matter is too weird. If you say that you feel a more appropriate thing in this place, then you may think that this is just them. It's just a sentence that forced Aruma to write. After all, from the beginning to the present, Aruma's actions have never been separated from anyone in this tradition, even though they are just a team of pirates, and Aruma has not joined. But it shouldn't be like that. It's okay. So without hesitation at this moment, Gong Yi still intends to believe in Aruma, but at the same time, he has to take Shiryu to find them. At the same time, at this moment, Shilu suddenly heard a voice in that child. Although he was very curious, he knew that Gong Yi would come indirectly, so would he bear to watch it? They quickly rushed up and filled the stairs, and behind them was the man who killed his brother back then, and what Shiryu burst out of in this one eye was all that kind of thing. A feeling of hatred, but at this moment Marshal Tucci suddenly burst out laughing. I really didn't expect to see such an expression after so many years, it's really wonderful. After hearing this, Shiryu didn't continue to talk to him, but just turned his eyes to the side, and had something to say with a lunatic. Could it be that he had to confess that he was also another lunatic? So I'm here. There was silence between the two for a moment. Marshal Tucci didn't bring up the topic, didn't say that he would take her away, and Shiryu didn't want him to ask for any news. Since Gong Yi promised that he could find his brother, he didn't have to choose the man in front of him. Maybe he would make an unequal deal with him. Otherwise, you are of no use to me, but your captain can. You can come back to the castle with me. Then leave a letter asking him to save you. Then I will take you to see your brother. In fact, he is not dead, just imprisoned in the depths of the castle. If possible, I can take you there see him, anyway. You two are the only aboriginal people on this small island, aren't you? After hearing this, Shilu couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Could everyone have been brutally murdered by him? Shilu suddenly froze for a moment, and then looked at the street that was coming and going, and found that they were basically burly figures. The big man and the people who bought and sold from other places really did not expect him to be so maddened. After imprisoning his brother and killing all the aborigines, he even did such a thing. He must mention this in the message he left to Gong Yi, but Shiryu didn't know how to do it. This is a sudden flash of inspiration and thought of the method Gong Yi gave him on the ship before, and that book is full of secret clues about the communication between pirates. Chapter 105. Garbled, 3rd. I really didn't expect it to come in handy at this time, but Shilu didn't show any expression on his face when he was happy. Instead he was still disgusted and unyielding, so that he could completely dispel the suspicion of the other party. But at this time, Marshal Tucci also grinned. I don't know what he was thinking, but it was definitely not a good thing. After thinking of this, Shiryu felt a little guilty for calling him by his name before, and it was an incredible thing not to think that someone like him still respected him so much. When you're done writing it, let's go quickly, your brother is still waiting for you there. After hearing this, Shilu couldn't help squinting at him, but the other party didn't have any insight, and even raised his head and laughed wildly, knowing that this was his territory, but Shilu's heart couldn't help it. The idea of wanting to beat him came up, but he knew that the strength was disparate, but he didn't dare to take action. He could only wait for Gong Yi to come to the money to save him. But he dug up where the bombs went at first, and when he went out, Shiryu found out that the bombs had already been discovered by the surveillance cameras, and all of them had cleared all the bombs for Marshal Tucci before they came, leaving only a dug and empty passage. After realizing this, Shilu couldn't help frowning, but he hadn't mentioned in his heart that there are cameras on the streets of all sizes in this place. With Gong Yi's worth of 600 million, this time he should be caught just arrest. But after all, things are in front of us, so giving up is not my style, but I didn't expect that when he returned to the hut, he would find that Shiryu was gone, and there was only a letter that was not left. No one knew what was written in the letter. What? But the moment he saw it, Gong Yi didn't. He smiled with relief. Shiryu really listened to what he said at that time. These things have causes and effects. If they can find their breakthrough point, then everything is just a very simple thing, but if you keep going, if they all stay at that starting point, then I am afraid it will be very troublesome in the future. So at this moment, Gong Yi took a letter, glanced in the direction of the sun, and extracted some important words that he needed. It seems that this time Shiryu and them in Aruma left the way of sex. It's the same, but why should he be left alone? Marshal Tucci should not be himself. When he thought of this, Gong Yi felt puzzled. But at this time, Bobo shouted a few times from the side, and when he looked aside, Gong Yi found that there was a layer of human skin mask-like thing under the bed, and inside was a small Lee box. It seems that this time Bobo yesterday, I made a great contribution. I used this method to infiltrate Marshal Tucci on the site. After all, she is his person. It's not a particularly excessive thing. After thinking about it, Gong Yi still intends to make you look like the man in black around you. After all the men in black wear a huge kabuto hat and a paper clip. It seems that this kind of thing can be owned by someone on the side of the road after knocking him out. Gong Yi is here. It never occurred to me that the streets of this place, large and small, are actually monitored. But fortunately, he is extremely smart. Under the circumstance of preventing everything, Gong Yi changed a person to put on a mask first, and then went out. After crossing an intersection, he entered a blacksmith shop. After a few minutes, he was gone. With such a face and a change of clothes, he even got the brooch. At this time, Marshal Tucci hadn't had time to discover Gong Yi's whereabouts, and the group of rice buckets in the monitoring room naturally didn't notice this scene. After Shiryu and Aruma were locked up, everyone couldn't help but watch when he arrived at the other party. He smiled, and then Alma counted the number of people, only to find that Lan Yingjian was not with them outside. At first, I thought that it should be with Gong Yi, but now it seems that things are not as I thought, so I hurriedly asked Shilu who was beside him if he had seen him. At this time, Shilu's face turned pale. He was one of the people who comforted him at the time. His kindness towards him was indescribable, and he ate the most of the sushi he encouraged. And he kept complimenting his craftsmanship. Later, after knowing his true thoughts and what to do, he continued to support himself and even forgave himself. This kind of thing is unforgettable for Shilu. He is very worried about losing himself now. Chapter 1006. Get in touch. But there is no way to get in touch with Gong Yi. This is a very troublesome thing. but at this moment, Shiryu also asks another point: why did Aruma not bring Bobo? At this time, Aruma sighed, taking a sigh of relief. He pointed to the small place in the small cabinet next to him. It was Shiryu who realized that Bobo actually hid in that place on his own initiative. However, I hope he did the right thing, since Gongyi knows how to do it. If you go to that place and look for it, the two of you should be able to meet. Therefore, the few people stopped worrying about this matter, but instead remembered how to deal with it. At this time, Shiryu remembered what Marshal Tucci said before, that there are any corners on this street. Monitor arranged by yourself. There is a piece of news that we should report to Gongyi. He installed large and small monitors in this place, not even a small corner. You said that Lanying would not be arrested because of this method. I don't remember, shaking my head, although I usually look at such a girl as stupid, but in fact, it should be among these people who know what to do when they are in danger, and the things on the parents' side have also been resolved. I just don't know if his father's side will come to rob people. After all, the people of the four emperor thieves are not able to give up easily. At the same time, Marshal Tucci appeared with the scepter in his hand at the door, and pointed at the number of people between them. Suddenly, he found that there was one less person, so he looked at Shiryu, who was beside him, in surprise, and Shiryu turned his head. No more talking. And at this moment, he heard a boy's cry. Shiryu quickly looked back and found that it was really his brother, and at this time Shiryu's brother also looked at the girl in front of him in disbelief. Why did I come back from that place? I had already exhausted all my ability to send him there. As long as I can live well, I will be satisfied, but he has come back again, which can make me feel good. You brothers and sisters, let's talk about old times first. I will take a few of them away and leave enough space for the two of you. Just as Marshal Tucci finished saying these words and took away all the people in Aruma, Shiryu's eyes were actually nervous. If they were killed, it meant that he was alone and helpless. I had no choice but to say such an end, otherwise my brother would have to suffer again this time. But at this time, there was a glance between the brother and sister, and Shilu quickly understood that the elder brother wanted to let him survive this period of time, and someone would naturally come to rescue him, but he didn't know where the reinforcements were. Shilu's brother used his eyes to soothe her, motioning to calm her down. Some things could be solved. It's not to say that everything has no breakthrough point, but the man in front of him has been smiling at the two of them, as if to see a hole in them. Marshal Tucci suddenly laughed, then looked at Shiryu in front of him. Aren't you going to tell your Lord Kuji where that little girl is? If it's good, I'll let you and your brother leave today. What do you think? Isn't this what they always hoped for? So it is probably because of this reason that they are led to this small island. Why didn't we make a deal? You keep them, I will let you and your brother leave. You can see what's good, but you have to take me to the place where he lives, or else I'll kill you all here. After hearing this, Shilu's face couldn't help but turn pale. This everyone should be referring to the group that followed. I really didn't expect Aruma to be dragged into a troublesome situation by herself this time. I don't know where Gongyi is. Hurry up and save them. I really can't stand this situation. But Gongyi still followed some signs on the street at this time. The entrance and exit of the senior's castle. This place is too complicated. The streets are surrounded by like a fan of Gongyi. But they walk among them. It seems that people with identity in this place should be able to know where this road leads. So Gongyi slowed down, kept a pace with the people around him, and then turned casually. After entering a few turns, he found that it was not the place leading to the castle at all, so where the passage was, Gongyi became a little distressed. But in the next second, something unexpected happened. While walking, he came across Lanying. Glutton, his mouth was filled with the special food on this island, and he kept mumbling. While moving forward, Phailu reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend, and share. Read the latest chapter. Baidu search 99 playmates, find 99 novels in LT and GT. Chapter 107. Where to go? At this time, Gongyi reluctantly stepped forward, grabbed Lanying's hand, and screamed at the opposite side. After everyone saw their familiar and reassuring eyes in the next second, they screamed like that. The voice swallowed back. At this time, Gongyi adapted him to speak in the passage next to him. After all, it could be seen that the people in this place were all serious about doing things. Only after entering the house would they say some special words that made people feel private. Is it under surveillance? I really don't know when she can get rid of this greedy glutton now, otherwise it will be hard to regret it when it causes a catastrophe, and at this moment, it is not considered that she is letting him. I can only say it's this place, it shouldn't be time to search, otherwise Lan Ying's actions will be discovered soon. Then you can still eat in this place and where else? So after thinking of this, Gongyi doesn't. He looked helplessly at the little woman beside him, but at this time he was still. He kept stuffing things in his mouth, as if he was about to be snatched away after a moment's delay. The nurse's behavior made Gongyi unable to worry about how to deal with it next. Instead, he took her to the shop next to him, went inside, changed him a face mask, and took her away directly. That place, go to the next corner. Do you know that they have all been taken away? If possible, stay quietly beside me this time and don't move around. Don't trust anyone. People on this island generally use disguise. After hearing this, Lan Ying, who was beside her, suddenly made a face. Aren't you afraid that I'm also one of those masked people? If I really are, then you should no longer exist now, or you should come back to pester me after thinking about it. Hearing these serious words, Gongyi didn't. He sighed freely. No one knew that he wanted to spend the rest of his life with those small snacks, but where did he get it in such a short period of time? With more money, you can trade with people on this small island. After all, it can be seen that this place is a separate life physique, and these coins should be circulated only on this small island. As the captain of the pirate group, there is no currency circulating on this trail at all. Do you want to ask where the money comes from? There is a performing arts venue at the end of this place. As long as you stand there for about 10 minutes and perform a skill that belongs to you, the money will come. At this time, Lan Ying had a completely ignorant look on her face, but for Gongyi on the side, it was different. I didn't expect that the last person I found in this place was actually him, and it turned out to be him. I also learned about such a thing, mainly because I don't know where the rest of the people were taken by Marshal Tucci. Many of the environments on this small island are the same as what I thought, and it can even be said to be completely consistent. It can be said that the city where I lived before is just a little different. This place brings Gongyi a sense of extreme familiarity, and even some incomprehensible. But at this time, in that castle, Shiliu was locked up with them, but Marshal Tucci took the rest away with him, leaving only Shiliu and his brother, who at this time his brother taking a step forward, he tentatively touched Shiru's face, and found that it was real. At this moment, tears in his eyes could not help but emerge. As for Aruma, who was taken away at this time, the group was thinking about what to do next in this place. How to escape from this place. If they want to rely on their current strength, then definitely no. After all, although Mayor said he has strength, he doesn't seem to be in the state. So Aruma will definitely not take a risk, but at the same time he can't just let everything happen like this. So Aruma is still thinking about how to get along with Gongshang, but at this time he seems to have all contact was cut off, as if I was afraid that someone on this small island was watching me. Aruma remembered and mentioned before. There are surveillance cameras everywhere on the island. He looked straight at Aruma, as if he wanted to see some clues from his face. This look made Aruma a little creepy. Marshal Tucci suddenly instructed his subordinates to quickly lift everything up, and when he really saw what was in front of him, Gongyi's eyes couldn't help but stunned. This is also a special fruit. Haven't seen it in a long time. Chapter 1008. Now that the fruit is seen in this place, it is a very shocking thing, but at this moment, Aruma didn't say much, and took a step forward. I was going to take a look at the fruit again to see what it looked like, but the man suddenly asked someone to remove the fruit, as if it was just for them to take a look. At this moment, Aruma's heart couldn't help but feel a little fluctuating. If she admits it correctly, that It seems to be a magic fruit, but no one in this team seems to need it. At this moment, Aruma remembered that Lan Ying seemed to have never since the beginning, there is no such thing as fruit. So Aruma looked at the fruit more, as if to engrave his appearance in his heart, but at this moment, Marshal Tucci stepped forward and stood in front of Aruma. It seemed like he was scrutinizing her, but Aruma didn't think there was anything special about him. Except a face that looks relatively young, but at this moment, the other party does not seem to intend to let go of himself, and at this moment, the other two people are also taken down, as if to separate themselves from themselves. Likewise, Aruma didn't say much at this time. If once your emotions are exposed, then everything that follows will become a stumbling block for you. It's not that you don't want to do such a thing, it's just that you don't want to go further and further on such a two-way road. Shuru, who met her brother in the room, was also very moved. I didn't expect my brother to still be alive, but looking at the bracelets and cuffs on his hands and feet, it seems that he should not be living very well during this time, and this time he came here to take it out of here. After Shilu told his brother about his plan, the other party's face was full of shock. He didn't expect that Gong Yi, who is worth 600 million, had come to Hayata Island. Everyone in this world is unbelievable. But at least at this moment, Shilyu's brother still believes his sister's words very much, and at present, without Gong Yi's help, Shilyu can't get there. Hayata Island, after all, this place is actually quite strange. If there is no real direction guide, it is impossible to reach this place. But at the same time, Shiryu's older brother didn't take this factor into consideration at all. If there is a connection between the two, it's probably the case at hand, but no matter what the explanation is, it doesn't make sense. But I don't know where to start. But at this time, Marshal Tucci has already taken everyone to another room, leaving only the three of them in different rooms, as if to interrogate something. At this time, Aruma didn't know anything at all, but he should be able to understand it based on the situation. It must not be a good thing. Otherwise, why would he separate everyone? Maybe he just wanted to sow discord and extract some information. But at this moment, Aruma found that the door in front of him was actually closed. It turned out that it was a closed passage, the same building, but at this moment, Aruma still thought of the safety of Shilyu's side. After all, the rest have the ability to protect themselves, and for Mayor, there is no need to doubt this thing. If Marshal Tucci really wants to attack him, at least he has to measure whether he can beat him. After all, his strength is still in this place. How could a person worth 360 million be caught like this? Isn't it obvious that some things are already obvious? It's just a matter of believing or not, but at the same time, at this moment, there was a sudden sound of being pulled open from the door next to it, as if the iron fence was being pulled open like this. Opened. I don't know who was so lucky to be released from this big cage, but at the same time Aruma also hoped that it was not one of them. Otherwise, some news must be released before they can be released successfully. At the same time, Aruma will have some headaches. If Gong Yi is discovered by the monitor at this moment, then they have appeared very bad. Big problems and bugs. Is your place really as good as you say? If there are some other faults found on this island, then I can't help you fix it. In the process of listening to them talking, Aruma learned that this person is the person who created all the architectural designs on this small island. I didn't expect it to sound like a young man in his 20s or 30s, with no age gap at all. I thought he had such a wealth of construction experience, and he should be a 506-year-old old man, but again reminiscent of Gong Yi's behavior before. Chapter 108. Fruit, 3rd. Now that I saw it in this place, it was a very shocking thing, but at this moment, Aruma didn't say much, and stepped forward, intending to take a look at the fruit again. What kind of thing? But the man suddenly asked people to take this fruit down, as if it was just to give them a look. At this moment, Aruma's heart couldn't help but feel a little fluctuating. If she admits it correctly, that it seems to be a magic fruit, but no one in this team seems to need it. At this moment, Aruma remembered that Lan Ying seemed to have never since the beginning, there is no such thing as fruit. So Aruma looked at the fruit more, as if to engrave his appearance in his heart, but at this moment, Marshal Tucci stepped forward and stood in front of Aruma. It seemed like he was scrutinizing her, but Aruma didn't think there was anything special about him. Except a face that looks relatively young, but at this moment, the other party does not seem to intend to let go of himself, and at this moment, the other two people are also taken down, as if to separate themselves from themselves. Likewise, Aruma didn't say much at this time. If once your emotions are exposed, then everything that follows will become a stumbling block for you. It's not that you don't want to do such a thing, it's just that you don't want to go further and further on such a two-way road. Shuru, who met her brother in the room, was also very moved. I didn't expect my brother to still be alive, but looking at the bracelets and cuffs on his hands and feet, it seems that he should not be living very well during this time, and this time he came here to take it out of here. After Shilu told his brother about his plan, the other party's face was full of shock. He didn't expect that Gong Yi, who is worth 600 million, had come to Hayata Island. Everyone in this world is unbelievable. But at least at this moment, Shilyu's brother still believes his sister's words very much, and at present, without Gong Yi's help, Shilyu can't get there. Hayata Island, after all, this place is actually quite strange. If there is no real guidance, it is impossible to reach this place. But at the same time, Shiryu's older brother didn't take this into consideration at all. If there is a connection between the two, it's probably the matter at hand, but no matter what the explanation is, it makes sense. But I don't know where to start. But at this time, Marshal Tucci has already taken everyone to another room, leaving only the three of them in different rooms, as if to interrogate something. At this time, Aruma didn't know at all, but he should be able to understand it based on the situation. It must not be a good thing. Otherwise, why did he separate everyone? Maybe he just wanted to sow discord and extract some information. Let's do it. But at this moment, Aruma found that the door in front of him was actually closed. It turned out that it was a closed passage, the same building, but at this moment, Aruma still thought of the safety of Shilyu's side. After all, the rest have the ability to protect themselves, and for Mayor, there is no need to doubt this thing. If Marshal Tucci really wants to attack him, at least he has to measure whether he can beat him. After all, his strength is still in this place. How could a person worth 360 million be caught like this? Isn't it obvious that some things are already obvious? It's just a matter of believing or not, but at the same time, at this moment, there was a sudden sound of being pulled open from the door next to it, as if the iron fence was being pulled open like this. Opened. I don't know who was so lucky to be released from this big cage, but at the same time Aruma also hoped that it was not one of them. Otherwise, some news must be released before they can be released successfully. At the same time, Aruma will have some headaches. If Gong Yi is discovered by the monitor at this moment, then they have appeared very bad. Big problems and bugs. Is your place really as good as you say? If there are some other faults found on this island, then I can't help you fix it. In the process of listening to them talking, Aruma learned that this person is the person who created all the architectural designs on this small island. I didn't expect it to sound like a young man in his 20s or 30s, with no age gap at all. I thought he had such a wealth of construction experience, and he should be a 506-year-old old man, but again reminiscent of Gong Yi's behavior before. Chapter 109. Dive into. This can't help but make Aruma contact the information suddenly. Does Gong Yi know this designer? Does he know a little bit of news about him at this moment? However, while listening to the two of them continue to speak, Aruma learned that the two of them were going to the top of the castle, but they didn't expect that place to be the control center of the entire prosperous city. Understand what the next process will be. But Aruma is not sure how to establish a connection with Gong Yi, but before he saw the whole difference in his eyes at that time, the light will never deceive people, he will definitely. I know this architect, and I know what kind of person he is. Since they are old acquaintances, I might as well create a chance for the two of them to recognize each other, not to mention that this time on the island of Hayata, Marshal Tucci has to be dealt with, and I don't know how the two of them dealt with it. So, looking at the two of them, it should be relatively good. But the two of them have just reunited not long ago, and I don't know if they have any details. The object, after all, the last time a few people were abducted, it was because someone used a human skin mask to make an identical brother of Shiryu, if this once unable to confirm his identity. Well, Aruma and the others will never agree to take this person away with them. If something goes wrong, who will be responsible? It can't be said that everyone will be buried for this matter. This is simply an impossible thing, and it can even be said that if this is true, then there are still many problems that need to be exposed slowly. And on this small island, Marshal Tucci still has the final say. After all, there are surveillance cameras on this bustling street, and he also controls some news here. If you solve these things beyond your ability, I am afraid that there will be some problems at that time, so at this moment, Aruma can only integrate all the things, and then do it, otherwise, who will come when there are problems? I'm in charge. But at the same time the two people were talking outside, and Aruma also got some news. It turns out that the side of the main console needs a key, but neither of them brought it. At the same time as the key, he came to this place to answer his own words. So basically the city can be taken over by two people. After all, if you want to find the key, it may not be in the main control room, but in this cell. As expected, Aruma groped in this room. For a while, there was a bunch of keys on the ground where Marshal Tucci was standing just now. He was really too careless. If he threw the cake to others for no reason, maybe others would treat him, but this time he was fine, but he would only take the initiative of this prosperous city. Quan took it away, not to mention that he abducted a few people to this place this time. I am afraid he did not think that he was bringing wolves into the room. Of course, there are still many inspectors in this place. If Gong Yi can solve it by himself, he naturally doesn't have to worry, but Bobo doesn't know where he went. I asked him to wait for him to come back in such a compartment on the deck, and I don't know if he was seen by Gong Yi. After all, if the two of them were in business, then if the money came from this place. Bobo's figure is actually the most suitable, and Aruma himself has found a face that everyone can recognize. After all, it is worth 600 million. If this thing is hyped outside, I am afraid that time will come. Everything was fine, but at the same time, Gong Yi couldn't believe it. When he and Lan Ying came to the outskirts of this place, they discovered that this castle is exactly. You made it according to the minaret in the Middle Ages, and everything is familiar to you, including where the ventilation ducts are all the same as the original one. I don't know what kind of god this architect is. Did he really come from an era with himself? But at this time, Gong Yi changed the face of a subordinate of Marshal Tucci, so getting in is actually very easy, but Lan Ying is different, she is a girl herself, plus, this is also the person who was named and mentioned in the previous surveillance to be arrested, but all the people didn't look at it when they were looking for it. To its traces. Who would have thought that he would go to the side to eat, and no one would have thought that this girl would just leave the team to eat. Everyone thought that he was not on this island, so it was not convenient for Gong Yi to bring it in. Chapter 110. Responsible. Otherwise, who will be responsible when something goes wrong? So at this moment, although Lan Ying's face was aggrieved, Gong Yi had no choice but to sigh and pat him on the head. You can't take him in, otherwise, everything will become more difficult. And if at this moment, if that person came to find fault, he would definitely make a point, but he didn't know what the situation would be next. But in fact, the most helpless thing for Lao Luo at this moment was the voice from the side. That was a soundly sleeping uncle. I didn't expect that such a person was actually guarding the gate of this castle. In a medieval castle, it seems that Marshal Tucci really doesn't understand what kind of advice this is. What kind of person should be sent to guard? The real Gong Yi just frowned, and strode in. He left Lan Ying at a food stall near the door, since if you like to eat delicious food, it is better to put it in that place first, which is also safer. Tell me, where the hell did the wanted criminal issued by Mr. Kuji a few days ago go? We have been searching for so long in the factory and haven't seen any trace of her. Could it be that the world has evaporated? After hearing this, the surrounding guards couldn't help but start to gag. It was after seeing Gong Yi that Gong Yi quickly handed over the documents he had found on the previous person to a few of them. After a bit of comparison, I let Gong Yi in, without even questioning, seeing how lax their defense is. This can't help but raise Gong Yi's eyebrows. Are all of Marshal Tucci's subordinates like this? If this is the case, then he should really consider whether all this can be carried out in a normal way. At least rushing to it was so easy in front of her that there was no obstacle at all. But at the same time, after searching according to the map, Gong Yi quickly arrived at the place where Aruma was being held. He knocked on the door of every room, asking if Aruma was inside, until the room in the last shot of the corridor. It was only then that Gong Yi discovered that Aruma was locked up in this place. He quickly opened the door with the key he had just taken from the jailer. After seeing Gong Yi's familiar face, Aruma put the key in his hand to him and told him that he was in a main control room at the top of the castle. It's an agency that controls the entire city. If Gong Yi wants to see that, the designer is also there. This is Gong Yi, no. He raised his eyebrows. When did he realize that he had some curiosity about the designers of this city? It seems that Aruma is really different from others. If it is Lan Ying, if such a neurotic person is with him, I am afraid that no matter what, he will not be able to find out, but the one who is worth 200 million has not noticed them, or is he just a greedy little girl? So everyone, it never occurred to me that he was actually a member of the pirates. Maybe this is more likely. After all, he does have a harmless face, and even usually only knows how to eat and drink, and then stand aside with a smirk. He has absolutely no awareness that a child should have. With a little helpless sigh, he picked up the key and walked upstairs. Then when I passed a corner, I suddenly remembered that Bobo was still here. I was here, so I turned around and put Bobo in Aruma, forbid one person to go up, holding the following keys. Aruma opened every door and let everyone out. And you regained the light. They couldn't help but look at the setting of the castle. This was a new type of building that had never been seen before, and it was even different from the place where his pirate group had stayed before. And at this moment, Gong Yi was also very surprised, because this castle completely conforms to some medieval designs, and even every winding path has some signs. If you guessed correctly, this is all according to the previous design. Come, then who is this designer? Did he travel from that place with him? If so, maybe all the mysteries can be revealed, and finally found a mutual acquaintance in a dead-end place. What a fortunate thing this is for Gong Yi. But while walking, Gong Yi found a very strange room at the end of the corner, with a skull painted on it. At this time Gong Yi directly stepped forward and walked in front of the room. No matter how this thing was placed, there must be some reason to take a look here, but it's not too much. Chapter 1111. Encounter. I just don't know if the design inside is the same as what I thought, but there will never be such a room in a medieval castle. The skull was originally a symbol of evil in the Middle Ages. If someone's castle has such a design, basically, it will be directly deported to the outside of this continent, so let Gong Yi not. Believable. The door again. Gong Yi was a little unbelievable. Believe, because the skull seemed to be opening the door by absorbing other people's blood. And Gong Yi didn't intend to donate his blood, but took down a bottle of Yuhi-colored liquid from the cabinet beside him. I don't know who it is, but he stored so much blood here, and they seem to have a common denominator. There are different labels on it, as if to indicate whose blood it is. This does make Gong Yi have some hair quality. Does anyone still need to make statistics on this matter? No, it's convenient to say more. After all, it's enough to think about some things. If you have to talk about everything, it will make people feel that there are indeed some hair quality, but at the same time at this moment, Gong Yi discovered an even weirder thing. The eyes of this skull are made of a piece of gold, so can it be said that the person who created this castle has actually read some books about forensics, but at this moment Gong Yi doesn't. I am sure. Also don't dare to doubt too much. After all, once something is confirmed, there is no way to go back. Today, I don't dare to confirm, and I don't dare to be sure. Once I really make such a decision, there are some things that are completely contrary to my own thoughts, but at the same time, the moment the blood drips, the skull opened quickly, and the door slowly opened. However, what is inside is not anything particularly precious, just a small box made of gold. No one knows what it is, but it should be a very important thing from a distance, right? Otherwise, why would you be born in such a place? And before you come, you should choose the blood of one. It seems that this time I was a blind cat and met a dead mouse. There was another pounding sound like a heartbeat. At this time, Gang Yi directly opened the box, and now there was a heart inside, a fresh one that was beating constantly. For some reason, she always felt that she looked familiar. After seeing the label on the side, only then did Gang Yi think of it, but he didn't expect it to be Marshall's heart. Before, he was constantly chasing him, but now that he has the heart, he might be able to hold a handle on him, but at the same time, for Gang Yi, it is naturally unnecessary. Show it off. So he quickly put it into his arms, said nothing, and after putting the box in place, he closed the door to its original position. The bottle of blood with water. All of these bottles are a dark brown color. It can be said that it should be used to hide people's eyes and ears. But it's not very convenient for Gang Yi to talk about such a thing, so after closing the lid, he left and continued to walk up the spiral staircase. When he finally reached the top, he found a main control room. The gate is closed from the outside, but Gang Yi can hear the sound coming from inside. It is nothing more than he is talking about how to improve such a place to make the operation of the castle more correct. Judging from some of the terms he said, he is definitely from the same period as himself, but Gang Yi at this time is not too sure. After all, some things are always like this when you are unexpected. Make some other choices. However, at this moment, Gang Yi heard the terminology spoken by that person, and the sound of his typing on the keyboard, which could not help but sound familiar, but Marshall Tucci on the side was impatient, as if it was because she was too much nagging, but this kind of thing can always make him understand how it is made after he has experienced it personally. But he didn't seem to want to understand that it was the person who commanded him to do everything well, but he himself didn't want to accept it. The designer sighed helplessly, but for Gang Yi in his knowledge, this person's design has been done very well, and no one can restore the medieval castle so perfectly. Restored all this so properly and so perfectly in a situation without external support, so for Gang Yi is a factor that has not been considered at all. Chapter 10:12. Brother and sister meet, third more. But at the same time, the door is locked from the inside, and no one can get in. It seems that this precautionary awareness is quite standard, but it has no effect on me. As the leader of a pirate group, I have already learned how to get the door open. Pry open. And the trace of breath revealed in it made me feel very familiar. If I guessed correctly, Marshall Tucci and his subordinates should also be there. The man in black who imitated Shilu's appearance should be him. The breath is definitely not wrong. At this time, after Aruma liberated all the people downstairs, he followed the way those people brought them to look for Shilyu and his brother. As expected, the two were locked here, and Shilulu's brother, with shackles on his hands and feet, did not expect them to be so vicious. But it's also true, what kind of sympathy would someone like Marshall Tucci have? And in Shilyu's eyes, he seemed to be very moved. He didn't expect that he had dug a hole for them before and got them involved in this scene. During the war, they were still willing to support themselves, which was indeed something that Shilyu did not consider. However, after seeing them, Shuru's older brother had a stunned look on his face at first. He didn't expect them to move so fast. In a short time, Gang Yi has come to look for them. And he opened all the surrounding passages. It seems that his movements are fast enough. He has listened to Shilyu's songs for a long time, Gang Yi's name, including how he started the war in that place, and how he led the pirates. Fight with those officers and soldiers, and win this duel. These things have been heard many times in the mouths of the prison guards, and it really is a man with a worth of 600 million, which is really different from the others, and the prison guards kept talking. And they have that kind of yearning look in their eyes. They should also hope to meet Gong Yi. Well, but now they are too late, but they can meet him ahead of time, and at this moment, Shiliu didn't think of it at all, because Gong Yi only promised one sentence before. It was mainly because he took the medicine before asking for their help, but now it seems that they don't mind this at all, and even took the key all the way to rescue the two people, which is really very touching. Because of the employee he wanted before, he could have thrown it in this place and never came back to see himself, but he did not expect Gong Yi to be a good brother resolutely, not only saving himself from such an environment, but also help yourself to clear all difficulties. If it is because of this original intention, then it is indeed a good thing for me. After all, it is completely ignored for Shuru. And Shilu's brother didn't expect that he was so loyal. It seems that the pirates are really trustworthy people. No wonder those people have envious looks in their eyes when they mention Gong Yi. I'm afraid that, Marshal, according to Fu Qi, there would be no such responsibility. As the owner of this city, he doesn't seem to need to have such a responsibility at all, but if he does, he can always solve all the difficulties. But there are some things that can always give you a carbine when you are caught off guard, just like Gong Yi is at the door of that main control room now. But suddenly someone inside opened the door, and he quickly dodged to the corner to the side, confirming that the person couldn't help but make a questioning voice after coming out, as if he was aware of the existence of someone outside the door. This side is close, at least the footsteps can reflect it very clearly. He should be constantly approaching his side, but Gong Yi will never make any noise, and he will not let her have any chance of realizing that he is in this place, and the man in black is facing the opposite direction. While walking, Gong Yi quickly slipped into the main control room, and closed the door. You don't come in yet, go out and pour me a glass of water. After hearing these words, Gong Yi didn't. You had to dodge and approached Marshal Tucci, and then appeared directly in front of him. The other party looked very surprised, and even sat back in fright, but after the next seeing his own in seconds, after disguising, he couldn't help but snorted angrily. Who allowed you to enter the main control room? This place is a forbidden area, don't you know that? Quickly call your boss to me. If you let me see you in this place next time, just pull it out and kill it. And there is no value in living, and I don't listen to what I say. Chapter 1013, Transmigrators. But at this time Gong Yi raised his hand and tore off the skin on his face. At this time, Marshal Tucci saw his true face and couldn't help but be stunned for a moment, but quickly returned to a cynical look. He didn't expect him to be able to come find yourself here. Isn't the lesson of the last time not enough? This time if you come to this place to find me, I can completely solve you directly. I think you should still know that I have such strength, otherwise you will always think that you are the only person in the place. I'm afraid everything is too much. After hearing this, Shilu just shrugged, but didn't say much. Sometimes some people are just so arrogant, to a point where people find it difficult to restrain themselves. But at the same time, such people also make people feel a little helpless. After all, they always feel that they are the most powerful in the world. However, Gong Yi stepped forward and grabbed his neck at this moment, but Marshal Tucci made a backhand. I avoided this attack directly, and I think about it, as the town owner of a town, how could there be no skills? Master, but at this moment Gong Yi looked at the architect next to him, and still wanted to communicate with him more. After all, he seemed to come from the same world as himself, and during the fight with Marshal Tucci, he also mentioned some words and ways of communication about that world many times. As expected by Gong Yi, the man's eyes lit up instantly, and he seemed to understand very well. If it was for this reason, then he should really think about it. What kind of development should be for Gong Yi next? But at this moment, Marshal Tucci quickly stretched his hand into a hook and grabbed it towards Gong Yi. This is the architect who directly took a stick, adjusted the distance between him and Gong Yi. Then he quickly pulled Gong Yi to his side, and then discussed some special issues with her. Under the dazed confrontation between the two, it was also the way for Marshall to understand, and successfully confirm that he was from that people from the world. Gong Yi's face is full of joy at this time. There is no place to meet people he knows. It seems that you really didn't expect a place to meet people from that place. I thought I was the only one who came to this world during that fluctuation. I was like this at the beginning. I didn't know until I saw this town. Sure enough, someone came from the same world as me, and I didn't think about how soon I would meet you, or because a brother of mine heard about you and me. Marshall Tucci's conversation confirmed that you are on the top floor, otherwise I don't know how long it will take to see you. It can be said that the two people are familiar with each other. After all, they also arrived from that world, but at the same time, it also made the designer feel a little unbelievable. Is this true? There is someone who came from that world like myself. It seems that there must be something in common between the two who came to this place, but they haven't found it yet. At this time, Gong Yi mentioned where he was suddenly summoned to this place before, and after the man sorted it out, he found that he seemed to be no different from her. At this time, Marshall Tucci suddenly rushed up, as if he was very dissatisfied with the two of them chatting and ignored himself. At this time, Gong Yi grabbed the architect and dragged it to the side. Then he faced the man in front of him alone, and he was very clear about what he was going to do, but this time he didn't expect it would be so easy to meet the designers of this city. After all, some things are sometimes not like what I think is so complicated. But at the same time, I didn't expect that the architect would come to help me. I thought he had lived on this island long enough, but his friendship must be deeper than his own. But I didn't expect that for a person living in a different world. There is nothing that makes people feel more cordial than meeting a fellow countryman, even if the other person has always helped him. It doesn't matter, let alone when he first met. When I arrived in this city, I was the master of my own idea. It wasn't until Marshall Tucci came here and seized everything, that he invaded his own territory, and even ordered himself to repair the city completely, and then helped him do some other things. For this matter, in fact, the architect's heart the face was very unhappy, but he didn't say anything. Chapter 1014, Settlement After Autumn. How can you deal with me together with him? Don't forget that your things are still there. I have it in my hands. If you don't have it, where can you go next? At this time, Luo Zipping didn't have any fear on his face. He has now found a companion. As long as he has it, he has a way to go back. That thing is just a sustenance. I always took it with me before. It was impossible for him to abandon it, because I was afraid that I would lose hope of living, but now I have found a suitable person, and the cooperation between the two must have returned from this ghost place. At this moment, Luo Zipping didn't want to take that thing back, but after seeing his expression of giving up, Marshall Tucci couldn't help but have an angry look on his face, unexpectedly before that he has been use this thing to deceive himself. Is something important to you? Mentioning Gong Yi's question, Luo Zipping shook his head. Is it important? It's just a spiritual sustenance. Now that I have found a suitable person to go back to, that spiritual sustenance should be considered a non-existent thing, but what Luo Zipping did not expect was that he did not return to that place quickly after accompanying him away, but once again embarked on other journeys, constantly walking around this place. Then I'll do it. After saying this, without obtaining Luo Zipping's consent, Gong Yi took a step forward and rushed directly in front of Marshall Tucci and fought with him. All the controllers are turned off. If you want to leave this place next, then this small island can no longer exist. Was just waiting for a suitable opportunity to escape from this place. After all, I came to this island because of those. The opportunity to escape from this island was also because of those things. Moreover, there is no need for Luo Zipping. In the next time after losing oneself, even if it is to go outside to find opportunities, it is better than waiting to die on this small island. There are still many difficulties for oneself in this world. Let go of people and things around them, not to mention the mess. But at the same time, Luo Zipping was also hesitating what to do. After all, looking at Gong Yi's posture, including the clothes she was wearing, she should be a member of the pirate team. If you say that you want to leave with him, it means you have to swim in the sea for a long time, and even during this period you may not find how to leave this world next, but at the same time, the card Gongyi also hopes to be able to leave, but I don't know what the method is. But the person in front of him has already attacked, and he didn't hesitate for so long, and made other choices, but at the same time Marshal Tucci dropped something like a fruit, which quickly turned into a cloud of smoke, enveloped both of them in it. When Gongyi caught Luo zipping, he was his friend anyway, and he was the only person he was familiar with in this world. He had to ensure his safety, otherwise he would regret it when the news disappeared. But at the same time, the two of them could hear that the footsteps of Marshal Tucci echoed slowly in this place, from far to near, and then gradually became heavier, as if to remind them that he was coming, but in two directions where two people are. When I went to investigate, I found that there was no such person, which made Gongyi think that the man was just teasing two people, but at the same time it was inconvenient for him to express some other opinions. After all, things seem to be different now. Not so optimistic, and now he and Luo zipping are being held back. If you can't find a way to overcome it in a short period of time, then you may be severely suppressed by others, and it will be much more difficult to escape. This smog, Gongyi is still there, trying to distinguish the man's situation, but he can't hear footsteps, and can't see any shadows. Gongyi was a little overwhelmed. But the only thing I can rely on is the hand I was holding. If I guessed correctly, it should be Luo zipping's hand, but just in case, Gongyi still put it in front of him. I wanted to see if that person was him, but I found that the person I was holding just now turned into a wooden stick. I don't know where the real person went, but now I have to be more careful. I didn't expect Marshal Tucci. There is still a certain strength, and he can take people away from under his own eyes. Chapter 10:15. Extraordinary Things, Third More. Then if you want to do anything excessive next, you can't blame yourself. After all, he provoked it in advance, and he just made a legitimate defense. I really didn't expect that as the captain of the pirate group, you are so talented. I thought that if I brought back Shiryu and the others this time, would I be able to meet a strong enemy, but I found out that this backer he got back. It doesn't seem like that. After Gongyi mentioned his voice, he quickly changed direction and locked his position again, but he kept moving while speaking, making him unable to judge where he was. But at the same time, Gongyi also took into account another point. If this place has been moving at the same speed and in the same direction, then he just needs to find a pattern. It's easy to take him down, but the problem is that if he's playing tricks, then things like himself may be a bit difficult, unless someone comes to help him, but according to his speed, he has to liberate all the people in the cage. I am afraid it will take a certain amount of time. So Gongyi took a deep breath, so he had to delay the time and wait until someone came to save him. After all, fighting alone is better than fighting with more people, so at this moment Gongyi finally came. He raised his head and faced directly opposite him. Why don't you come out and say something? Hide in a dark corner and say what a hero, and now it seems that you can't beat me. This is your territory, so you don't plan to come out and do it honestly and openly. Order anything. After hearing this sentence, Marshal Tucci didn't speak anymore, but went silent all of a sudden, which made Gongyi a little surprised. Could it be that she was kidnapped by someone else? But why is this his territory? Maybe that's why he was even more surprised by what happened in the next second. He actually emerged from the ground. It can be said that if he read it correctly, he just said that the storefront was integrated. At this time, Gongyi seemed to be aware of what it was, but he made sure that he couldn't make other choices before he had discovered whether it had a second ability, so that Gongyi was only doing his duty. Look around. Sure enough, at the moment when he appeared on the ground beside Marshal Tucci, he quickly teleported over and caught him. At this time, the man didn't respond. He smiled lightly. He copied it from someone else. Skills, of course, he would not have imagined, and this story seems to have a lot more than this time. But it seems that if he recovers, the next fight will be easier, so without hesitation, Gong Yi squeezes a move with his hands. Copied the fruit of Marshall's Chi-Chi, and ate it without hesitation with his head raised, but the savior arrived at the same time, and Aruma and Shiryu rushed over some software at this time. But when they opened the door, what they saw was a cloud of smoke, and there was no trace of the ground. There was no one in the room, and Gong Yi also didn't know where the architect was dragged by Marshall Tucci. But it can be ensured that it is safe. After all, if he and his party are driven away, this result will definitely still need to be restored, and Marshall Tucci can only rely on Luo Zipping, even if he did something to his advantage before, but what is harmful to him, he must also recognize the facts in front of him. After all, this town was created by him. If Luo Zipping wanted to destroy it, it would be too easy. All it takes is an emergency brake button, then they will all turn into ruins. The reason why Gong Yi saw this before did you press it down because he didn't want Luo Zipping's hard work to go to waste. Maybe he still has his own scope of consideration, he is just a traverser of his same origin, there is no need to destroy all other people's ideas in this world, just like himself as the captain of a pirate team. I don't have any attachment to my identity, so I don't really want to destroy other people's lives. Captain, are you there? Just after Aruma asked a tentative question to the room, but there was no reply from the inside, so at this time Aruma observed that there seemed to be a piece of soil coming out of the corner of the wall, and hit him. A gesture, if I guessed correctly, it should be the retreat gesture that is particularly familiar on the ship. So Aruma, without hesitation, pushed all the people out of the door, and then closed the door. As expected, at the moment when they left, that is, the moment the door was stuck, a voice came from inside. The sound of fighting was loud and intense. Chapter 1016, Backhand. Isn't the captain in there? At this time, Shiryu's brother suddenly asked a question. Shiryu smiled and immediately understood what Aruma meant. It seems that Gong Yi must be in it, but he has other plans. It would only delay him, but he did so, considering a double possibility. Take him away first, I'll pick him up here. After hearing this, the few people did not delay much. Mayor led the team and led Shiryu, his brother, and Yu to leave together. After going outside, several people met several guards, all of which were successful. Avoiding it, I have to say that Meyer's strength is still there, no wonder the statistical value is so high. On the way this time, Aruma also saw clearly. In fact, Gong Yi treats his brother very well. It can even be said that as long as he joins his pirate group, basically no one will suffer any harm, even from the outside world. Blame, Gong Yi's not allowed to happen. Moreover, he will take care of all the mummies by himself. The last time he was in that city, he had seen it for a while. Originally, he was accusing his subordinates of misbehavior. After investigation, it was found that there was no such thing, so Gong Yi he went back without saying a word, and had some arguments, and even almost got into a fight in the end. At that time, Aruma was actually quite envious. These members of the pirates, after all, they were the scene that I had never seen before, not to mention that cute girls like Lan Ying also joined. And it seems that he still maintains an innocent look, there is nothing he can't do. What's more, Gong Yi has never forced himself from the beginning, everything is waiting to do such a thing voluntarily, so without hesitation, at this moment, Aruma still chooses to believe in Gong Yi. Waiting outside the door, maybe there will be some other discoveries. As expected, after the two people fought for a while, one person was suddenly thrown out by the door when it was opened. The first step helped the person up, the other party introduced himself, and found that he was the town's architect Luo Zipping. Then he told himself that the two people inside were fighting, and the movement was quite big, so he took it down directly, so Luo Zipping directly picked up Aruma and got on the boat, ready to let him leave. You guys should stay here for a while. Once you press the emergency button, the whole city will be destroyed, he will definitely have other escape routes, he is familiar with how my city is built, but you can know. But at the same time, they also checked and found that Lan Ying was not in the team. It turns out that everyone has never met him since they were with Gong Yi at the beginning, so where did this kid go? Unable to be very anxious, Alma stared at everyone's emotions and took the initiative to go out to find Lan Ying alone. But at this time, Bobo also followed, and Aruma touched her head very moved, and then walked with her. As expected, Lan Ying ate at the food stalls around the castle. Very happy. After seeing this scene, she sighed, and Aruma stepped forward and took Lan Ying's hand and took her away, which made Lan Ying still confused. She didn't expect anyone to appear, but she saw that it was Uru. After Ma, she let go of this vigilance and completely forgot what Gung Yi told him before leaving, that no one close to them could leave with them. There are a lot of people on the island who know one kind of people who have completely forgotten about him at this time, only looking at the delicious food in his hand, so he followed the notes and left, and he didn't react until he was about to get to the boat. This was asking if Aruma was the one she knew, and Aruma couldn't help but have black lines all over her face. There are some people pretending to be other people on this small island. At first, when they watched her walk with her, Aruma thought she recognized herself, but in fact it should be too happy to eat, and then she gave this matter to her. Forgot. After thinking of this, Aruma pinched WeChat with a headache. Regarding this matter, she really didn't know what to say, but she had to settle him first, so that she could have a chance to go back. Just Gung Yi, after all, the two of them want to compete fairly. But it's been a bit too long now, and if he doesn't come out, he will really make himself feel that Gung Yi is leaving behind someone who wants to destroy the whole city. But at the same time, some of Gung Yi's situation is still okay. The two of them are inseparable. After all, the two are on the same level in terms of strength. In addition, Gung Yi copied the fruit of martial Tuchi, and the strength of the two it's hard to tell the winner under the same circumstances. Chapter 107. Debt. But this is of course nothing to Gung Yi, but to martial Tuchi. Some problems are exposed very clearly, and it can even be said that this is a very troublesome problem. If everything is resolved, at least the person in front of you must be removed first. After all, he is a difficult problem for himself, and his appearance is not a good thing. Since Gung Yi has already taken Shiliu and his brother away, and his companions have been solved, why is he not willing to leave here? Ugly speaking, if you stay any longer, I don't think you will get enough sleep, but if you leave now, I think you can still live, not to mention that we have no grudges to calculate. Yes, as for the rest of your companions that have been taken away, Shiliu and her brother have also been taken away by you, what else is there with me? At this time, Gung Yi chuckled lightly. This is for Luo Zipping to make a little contribution, and also for the sins that Shilu and his brother have suffered. You don't owe me anything, but don't you think you owe him something? All the aboriginal people on the land have been cleared. Go out just so you can see another city. Anyway, both of them have the same skills, Gung Yi doesn't. Fear him, and the same martial Tuchi won't admit defeat in advance. The two of them persist in such a small space, anyway. Gung Yi also has a nirvana stunt. If he really pissed himself off, then he will suffer. But there are some things at this time, it is still difficult to draw a conclusion, but Shiliu and her brother's revenge, he will definitely avenge him, and along the way, if this man did not make trouble, himself and Uru, some people have already joined together, but I don't know how they are now. If it was entrusted to Aruma, then this matter is basically half completed. They should be waiting for them on the boat, and before they left, they instructed Luo Zipping not to let them delay in this place for a while. Seconds, I hope they can understand their good intentions. At this time, Marshal Tucci suddenly turned himself into a part of this face, as if he was mobilizing the enthusiasm of the land inside, and then looking for existence. At this time, Gung Yi was also working hard to mobilize his whole body. Hope to learn such a skill soon. But after all, I didn't use it for so many years, how could I have learned so well all at once? So at this moment I was still bounced from the ground by his skills. At this time, Gung Yi, who was sitting on the ground, didn't. Looking at the doorknob to the side, there seems to be a layer of things on it. I really didn't expect to see such a familiar picture in this place, but everyone knows that gold is the nemesis of soil, so iron, the handle, can also be the nemesis. This way, he seems to have found a weapon that can punish him, but at this moment, he also jumped out of the ground. Gongyi didn't even think about taking a step forward and using brute force to smash that. After breaking his hand, he quickly threw it over his head. Marshal Chichi shrank his neck, but he still couldn't hide, and there was a bloodstain on his forehead. It's not hard to see that he couldn't hurt him with so many attacks before, but after throwing a touch, he felt that the damage was far greater than I expected. If you say this, you can take it in the future. Such a way to attack, but the metal in this place is limited after all, but the most important thing in the main control room is the handle. After all, every operation seems to need to be carried out some control. At this time, nothing can be more grateful to Luo Zipping than at this moment. Even if I saw him when I first saw him, I was not so grateful to be able to leave this world. But only at this moment, everything has been magnified several times. The official Illuma and Bobo are already on their way to bring Lan Ying back. I have to say that he is so happy to eat, and he really makes himself feel right. He had a problem with Yuhi, so Aruma bought some food and brought it back to the boat. After Luo Zipping saw this scene, he didn't know whether to cry or laugh. Should he side for Gongyi, his teammate Sanchi was too hardy, or should he felt a little bit pitiful for him? He fought in that place, but these people are drinking and drinking in this place. But shouldn't this be the atmosphere that pirates should have? But they really don't worry about their boss. What if something goes wrong with Gongyi? Well, I didn't expect someone to comfort me. Chapter 1018. Question 3rd. Just when Luo Zipping was embarrassed, Lan Ying next to him suddenly took a step forward. It may seem that all girls have a common topic, but I didn't think that Luo Zipping was actually a boy. But it is because the popular long hairstyles are different, so they are mistaken. For him, there is still a little girl who likes him. Who would have thought that he would hug him when he came up? This is Luo Zipping's face. He couldn't help but Yuhi. Lan Ying thought, how could there be such cuteness in the world? The girl who just hooked her shoulders and put her back on her back, with Yuhi's face like this. Don't worry, he will be blessed if he doesn't die, and how could he just die like a ruffian, so we are very relieved to have a decisive battle over there. After hearing this, Luo Zipping sighed, so he followed Lan Ying's footsteps to eat. After Aruma saw Lan Ying brought Luo Zipping over, the expression on his face became stiff. How did the two of them get together all of a sudden? It's just beyond their ability. I thought it would take a little longer. Not to mention I didn't expect Luo Zipping to surrender this ship not long ago, the most difficult girl to deal with, but since this is the case, it is naturally inconvenient for me to say something, just eating and drinking silently on the table beside. At this time, Mayor, who was next to him, came out. It seemed that something was wrong with Aruma, so he approached her and asked about his condition. This was Aruma, who looked up at Lan Ying who was beside her. With Luo Zipping, Mayor couldn't help but patted him on the shoulder at this time. Don't worry, it's no big deal if it's all the crew, and it's no big deal if it's all girls. After hearing this, Alma's face suddenly froze, and then she laughed loudly again. She didn't expect Lan Ying to recognize her as a little girl. If Mayor had such an idea, I guess he couldn't run either, as expected. After hearing his laughter, Lan sluggishly turned his head to look at Aruma, only to find that the other party was laughing, and was still pointing in his own direction. Is it because of something or that this newcomer shouldn't have I took over by myself, and I also came to invite him to dinner, but in the next second, his smiling face really made me feel that he was a little beaten. Lan Ying, you probably didn't know he was a boy. When he heard this sentence, his face turned the same color as the bottom of a black charcoal pot, and he quickly retracted his hand that was on Luo Zipping's shoulder, and the hand he was looking at was fascinated, as if it's like she hates her. This move made everyone laugh out loud, and also made Luo Zipping a little embarrassed, and also decided that he was going to leave the ship next. This moment is still for Gongyi. Fighting hard, did not expect this person to be so difficult to deal with. Marshal Tucci suddenly appeared from behind him and whispered a word to him. Anyway, you're useless to fight in this place. If I want Shiliu's life, The two of them have long since lost any anger, so you don't have to worry, neither do I. I'll take action on them both. Why don't we just break up today? After hearing this, Gong Yi quickly caught its direction, then threw it with metal, and sure enough, under the shroud of white fog, he heard a sudden scream from Marshal Tucci. Then, Gong Yi blew away the surrounding white fog again, quickly found the direction of Marshal Tucci, rushed forward and pressed him to the ground, but the opponent didn't respond, and then he was punched a few times in the face, but Gong Yi didn't want to give him a chance to breathe at this time, otherwise he would be himself who didn't have time to breathe. But the opponent's attacks were followed by one after another, which made him unable to get up all of a sudden, but Gong Yi was also observing the surrounding environment while attacking him. If he guessed correctly, he should be keeping one hand, but he had to do everything well, lest he suddenly attack from behind at that time. The price to be paid at that time may be much higher than this. Gong Yi, who didn't hesitate, just opened the door directly, and after attacking him, he threw all the metal he had in his body, smashed it on his body, and locked the door. The handle can't be opened at all. If you want to escape from this place, there is only one option. That is, press the break button of this city, but the whole city will collapse, and he will also be submerged in such ruins. I don't know how Gong Yi thought about it, but the behavior has been made. Outside the door, Gong Yi had no choice but to think with guilt that Luo Zipping's achievements might be in vain. Chapter 1019, Destroy. That has been built for so long is suddenly destroyed. I am afraid I am a little unhappy in my heart, but after we went back, Gong Yi tentatively asked Luo Zipping this question, but the other party seemed to be okay. It seems that no matter whether the city is destroyed or not, it has no value to itself. However, the other party hopes that he does not want to travel with this pirate group at sea, and hopes to find another small island to continue living. Such a proposal makes Gong Yi a little surprised to weigh. If this is the case, if he finds an escape in the future, then how should I contact him? If that's the case, it's not impossible to follow you, but I always feel that I can't get along with you. In the world before, I was only doing a clerical job, so I would say more, not to mention that I want to get along with you guys. The pirates are all very nice, but they make me feel a little more unrestrained. At this time, Gong Yi smiled stupidly, and then grabbed Lan Ying, who was beside him. At the moment of confirmation, he felt a little bit more bitter towards Luo Zipping. If she wasn't a girl at first, why didn't she tell herself clearly? Instead, he made himself look bad in front of everyone. Of course Gong Yi didn't know these things, but he just felt that there was something strange between the two of them. He originally wanted him to bring Luo Zipping to familiarize himself with this place. Now that he saw his wink that he wanted to kill, Gong Yi was still after a Cold War. I decided to do it myself, so I took Luo Zipping around the place where the ship was staying. This place is your bedroom, and this day is mine. If you have any new discoveries or problems, you can contact me directly. You should be next to Aruma, and I think you two should be fine. It's ripe. As for what is the problem between the two of you, I really want to ask, did it happen when I went to Marshal Tucci? At this time, Luo Zipping turned his face to Yuhi, and then told Gong Yi about it. This is Gong Yi, and he laughed so hard that his chest was sticking to his back. There must be other reasons for being angry. Maybe Luo Zipping did something sorry for her. I didn't expect it to be like this. It was beyond my expectations. Just like the singer of a band in my own world. There is always a very long pigtail on the back of the head, but there is no particularly long hair in the front. At first glance, people will recognize it as a girl. After seeing this scene, Luo Zipping couldn't help laughing. This time is also ashamed of Yuhi's face. I didn't expect that my own discovery would cause such disturbance to others. But he also thought of Lan Ying's cuteness, and couldn't help being stunned for a while. This is what Gong Yi couldn't help thinking when he saw his expression. Luo Zipping should like which one, but he didn't dare to talk to him because of this matter, or it's hard to say what it is, but you must know that Aruma is still watching. There are many crew members on this ship, and it is not convenient for him to favor anyone. And at this moment, the two of them can only talk about their own affairs, but the contradiction has not been resolved. which makes Gongyi a little bit incomprehensible. Could it be that Luo Zipping can't even save face? I still want to ask you if you can put me down on the nearby island. Parading on the sea has never been my favorite style. If you find a way to leave this place, or I find it now, I will take the initiative to find a way to contact you. You just need to come back to this small island to find me. After hearing this, Gong Yi didn't. I was stunned for a moment. I didn't expect him to have such magical powers, but I think that he could build such a huge city with his own strength. I must have some skills. Of strength. I have time to question so much in this place, so I might as well consider where I should sail next. At this time, Aruma was starting the entire pirate ship. Suddenly I heard the sound of disintegration from the city, and when I looked up again, I found that the city had begun to slowly collapse. This was a trace of loneliness that could be seen in Luo Zipping's eyes, but there's no way, if it doesn't, everyone can't get out of that place. At that time, not only one person will be implicated, but all people will be left in that place. Luo Zipping naturally understands what is big and what is small, but at this time Gongyi is more if I want to drag him into the team and take her as one of them. Wouldn't it be a beautiful thing to sail together at that time, and it will be much easier to communicate with each other. Chapter 1020, Survival. But the same thing is also more difficult for me to handle. After all, the other party is not willing to agree to this aspect of things, and even less willing to compromise, just want to go to another place to build a city that is the same as this, or similar to this. Maybe he thinks this kind of place is eternal. Therefore, at this moment, it is not convenient for me to point out any more. After all, I have no right or status to speak at all, but think about it from a different perspective. If there is a place that has become different, I may understand why he wants to live on land, and that place may be much more stable than the sea, and he will not worry so much anymore. What's more, the way of living on land is much shorter than the time to adapt to the sea. After all people have survived in that place. But at the same time, a few people decided to put people down on the small island in front. When they left, everyone watched the scene on the deck. The grand city collapsed. I have to say that this really made everyone feel a shocking scene. When the whole city is sunken, it can be seen that the foundation of the place is very deep, especially when the tallest castle collapses. Maybe Luo Zipping also made preparations for such an escape before, otherwise why would he put the castle on the ground? The collapse of the building is so vigorous that it looks like someone deliberately planted a huge bomb next to it. In the process of such a collapse, all the neon lights on the seaside were turned off, and it can be said that the electricity supplied from that place was also slowly extinguished. This scene can't help but make everyone stare at the strait. It must be known that the collapse of this town was unexpected. In addition, the collapse of this town and some fringe areas also made everyone feel very surprised. But what Luo Zipping revealed in his heart may be more of a kind of distress, but what everyone on board did not expect was. When they arrived at the next marginal island, Ran was willing to live there, and no longer traveled on the island with them, and the most surprising thing to everyone was that brother Sylvia was willing to stay in this place. If you don't want to, I and you left together, there's no need to go in this place, and, if that's the case, I won't see you for a long time. At this time, Lan Ying couldn't help Shilu's hand. Shilu was inconvenient at this time. What more to say? After all, she has made up her mind to go, not to mention that when my brother goes to the place, he must accompany him. It is impossible to separate siblings any longer. And at this time, Shilu's brother looked at him with a doting face. His sister seemed to be waiting for his decision. As long as he decided to stay, then he would accompany him. If he said he wanted to leave, and he will follow in his footsteps without hesitation. After all, although the person in front of you is important, it does not mean that you have any relationship with yourself. For yourself, the existence of Shilu may be much more important than him, or even a more important existence. But Gongyi didn't say anything, not even a word, but the more important thing is to bring Aruma into the team first. After all, if they don't want to be together, they have to add another team member. Now it's full of 5 people. If you add Aruma, it's 6 people. The difference between them is not one person, but a force in the team. But there was no way. At this time, Shilu had decided to leave. In desperation, Lan Ying had to give him all his good things and asked him to guarantee that he would be fine in this place. Luo Zipping plan to a new city will be built in this place. Originally, Shiliu and his brother wanted to stay in the city that Marshal Tucci destroyed before. But then I remembered that all the Aborigines had already been taken away by him, and the people in that place were basically his subordinates. Thinking that Luo Zipping also had this intention, that it is better to have 3 people in company than a lot of people, so Gong Yi also tried his best to guarantee. If feasible, he would bring more people back to this place to settle down, and at this time Luo Zipping thanked a few people and left. Before leaving, Luo Zipping deliberately called Gong Yi aside, and took out a book from his pocket, which he took from a secret castle on Hayata Island. Come, that place is even Marshal Tucci, they have never been there, so Luo Zipping is not sure whether the things inside are real, but the records are all related.